On 5 News tonight, the row over child migrants, the mission to Mars, and Barack Obama's blunt message for Donald Trump. The controversy over calls for more rigorous checks on child refugees from Calais after some MPs say they look more like adults. An anxious wait has the Schiaparelli probe successfully landed on Mars. And
Hillary Clinton is the most corrupt person ever to run for the presidency.
as Donald Trump gears up for the next TV debate, President Obama tells him to stop whining. Also tonight, I'm talking to an entertainment legend. Donny Osmond is here to tell me about 50 years in showbiz. Good evening, welcome to 5 News Tonight. I'm Matt Barbett. It was supposed to be Britain's way of helping vulnerable children, but now the migrants coming here from Calais are at the centre of a huge row about their ages. One MP says they should be given dental tests to prove how old they are, saying some look older than 18. That's been condemned by critics as unethical. But today, the Home Office released figures about refugees who'd come here previously. It said that more than two-thirds of those who had their ages assessed turned out to be older, despite claiming to be children. We'll discuss all of this in a moment, but first, here's our political editor, Andy Bell.
More arrivals from Calais today. They've been allowed into the UK under a system that unites unaccompanied children with family members. But these people who arrived on Monday have provoked surprise. Their appearance has given rise to a campaign for more checks to establish if all of them are really under 18.
They seem very surprised that they've ended up here.
One MP who's been to the so-called jungle to make a documentary wants a change in the rules and more checks.
At the moment, they're screened on the basis largely of appearance and answers to questions, which they could have been coached in. And if there's any, they're always given the benefit of the doubt because that's what the government guidance says. And all I'm suggesting is, in the light of what we've seen, the fact that we know that activists will be coaching people in what to say, we need to update that guidance. And where there is room for serious doubt, that we ask people to undergo an X-ray.
But there are no plans to make changes in the way the children are screened. The Home Office says all individuals are interviewed by French and UK officials. Where credible and clear documentary evidence of age is not available, criteria including physical appearance and demeanour are used as part of the interview process to assess age. Measures like dental x-rays to establish the age of migrants have been ruled out. That's backed by the dentist professional body.
Taking an x-ray of a wisdom tooth, which is what we're talking about, and deciding from that whether somebody is actually 18 or not is almost impossible.
Azizullah is an Afghan boy who has been cleared to come to Britain.
I'm very happy and I want to join my brothers in UK, and I'm very happy today. And also I appreciate this progress in UK government.
There should be more to follow him, but the Home Office must make sure that adults posing as children are not making a mockery of the system. Andy Bell, 5 News.
With me now is Zoe Gardner from the charity Asylum Aid, which is helping child refugees come to Britain from Calais, and also Conservative MP Peter Bone, who used to chair the MP's Human Trafficking Committee. Good evening to you both. Zoe, wouldn't it be better if these people coming here looked like children?
What does a child look like? I mean,
younger than those people, most people think.
Well, most people think sitting in their armchair at home looking at a picture that's been carefully chosen to support a certain narrative in the press. You know, people have been sharing pictures of themselves on social media when they were sort of 15, 16 and they were tall and hulking. I think there was an interesting one shared of Diego Maradona on his first outing in the Premier League, and he was 15 and he's huge and he's got, you know, facial hair. People look different when they're children. These people have undergone rigorous tests and they've had very difficult lives, and that might contribute to them looking more haggard. They're also, you know, from areas around the world where they have potentially going to grow more facial hair at younger ages and so on. So this kind of judgment from a couple of photos on the tabloid press and the hysteria that it's brought about is absolutely disgraceful.
Peter, your colleague David Davis MP said it himself in Andy's report there. The guidance is give them the benefit of the doubt. And we know for sure that these are desperate people who've gone through some hideous things to get this far?
Yeah, I mean, the age issue to me isn't the important thing. It's whether we're actually helping human traffickers here, because this is classic trafficking as far as I can see, because they may well be children, but how on earth did they get to Calais if they were children? They've been trafficked there. And what we're doing by allowing these people in, these children in, is we're encouraging more to be trafficked, more to come the dangerous route, more to die, more to be abused. And my concern is, are we actually passing them on to real relatives, or are we passing them on to false relatives? And that's normally the trafficking thing. And of course, they come with no documentation.
But trafficking, of course, is wrong when it benefits the traffickers. But the people being trafficked are going through that situation because they're trying to escape from a much worse one.
I think this is an important distinction to make, because I think that what you're referring to is smuggling, which is the process whereby somebody's taken across a border.
You're right.
Trafficking is when somebody is forced into prostitution or forced labour.
Tricked, actually.
These children
normally
are.
tricked. And,
Yes.
yeah. So these people arriving here are victims. But unfortunately, what we are doing is encouraging more to come, more victims, because we're actually, the traffickers go back and say, well, look, you can get into the United Kingdom.
Hang on, Peter.
disagree.
Maybe we're just not helping enough victims. Isn't that the real problem? We're not really taking our fair share, are we?
What the government's original position was, we would take children from the camps, so they could not possibly be trafficked.
Yeah, a dozen at a time.
No,
Really
talk about the numbers. Whatever the numbers are, I think you should be taking them from the camps and doing a proper job, rather than what looks to me like a classic trafficking situation. And I think what we need to follow up is what happens to these people after they get here. Are we still know what happens to them? Because I think within about 2 or 3 weeks, these people will disappear and will be abused.
Which is another question if you ask in Prime Minister's question time. Zoe, just answer this, though, about the number of people coming here seeking refuge, purporting to be children, and then 2/3 of them are actually proven to not be.
Well, actually, in the experience of asylum aid and the children that we represent within the system, we see far more cases of the government actually being forced to pay out sums because they've unlawfully detained people who turn out to be children and who have been assessed to be adults. So we have very rigorous and quite harrowing processes, psychological tests and interviews and so on, that these children undergo. But just to come back to your earlier point, because I think it is important.
I don't want you to, because I want to ask Peter something else, actually. And talking about those rigorous checks that you mentioned there, would dental checks be right in your eyes to carry out on these individuals?
Well, look, the Home Office and the Border Agency have had the checks, the way they do it, and they've had it for years. And as far as I'm concerned, they're the best they can do. Whether that involves dental checks, you would have to ask them. I don't think it does. I think that the problem, yes, it's difficult to know whether someone's 18 or 17 or 19, but that isn't the issue. It's are we looking after people properly? Are we encouraging things that are wrong? It's a much, much bigger question.
And it strikes me that both of you think that we're not looking after people properly.
Well,
I don't. I think I agree with that.
We need to be looking after. We need to be making absolutely sure that these people, anybody that we bring over, whether it be under the resettlement scheme from the camps in the region, or whether it be under these schemes from Europe, or whether it be just asylum seekers who arrive in the UK and make claims independently of those schemes, we need to be taking better care to look after them. But I absolutely reject this idea that rescuing a few children who have family members here in the UK, and many of these children have proven that through documentation, through passports.
Yes.
Those people are not being drawn here by that. They've already undergone these incredibly dangerous journeys. Okay. It's not a pull factor. That argument, I think, has been totally debunked.
I'm afraid we're out of time. But Zoe, Peter, thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you.
Now, a robot the size of a small car is aiming to make history on Mars. The Schiaparelli probe was due to touch down on the surface of the red planet in the past couple of hours, which would make it the first ever European spacecraft to do so. Its mission could not be more important or inspiring: to look for signs of life, past and present. Back here on Earth, though, scientists have an agonising wait just to find out if it's been successful, as Catherine Jones explains.
At Mission Control in Germany, they're on tenterhooks. An hour after they'd hoped to get a signal, they're still waiting to find out if the European Space Agency has managed a successful landing on Mars for the first time ever. This simulation shows what's been happening 110 million miles from Earth. After 7 months travelling towards Mars, the Schiaparelli lander detached from its mothership this afternoon and set off for the planet's surface. The prime purpose of this mission is to get this landing right. A parachute must deploy, the heat shield must detach, then thruster rockets must fire, all to slow this half-ton probe from 13,000 miles an hour to walking pace, so it gently drops onto the Martian soil.
Now, all of this has to work perfectly in order to make it down to the surface in just in one piece. So it's very, very tricky to get this right in a place like Mars.
Schiaparelli is only designed to operate for 4 days, taking weather measurements. But if today's landing is successful, the same technique will be used in 4 years' time to land a European rover on the red planet and drill beneath the surface for evidence of life.
They're drilling deeper beneath the surface than ever before to explore an environment that's protected from the harsh radiation of the sunlight that hits Mars and provide somewhere that we can search for complex organic molecules, the building blocks of life on Mars.
13 years after the Beagle 2 mission ended in failure, today should mark the start of a brighter future for the European Space Agency.
What we're doing today is the first step on a long journey which will involve, hopefully in the near future, sending a spacecraft to Mars to bring samples back, not just to drill beneath the surface, but bring them back to labs on Earth. And beyond that, of course, what everybody's really interested in is sending crew to Mars.
A manned mission to Mars may be a distant prospect, but today's landing should go a long way towards making it possible. Catherine Jones, 5 News.
Well, let's chat about this now with astronomer Tom Kerrs from the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, Brendan's colleague, no less. And you're all still chewing your fingernails because you're still waiting to hear.
We are, yeah. Mixed fortunes, really, from the mission today. It's great news that the Trace Gas Orbiter, which is the spacecraft that is designed to go in orbit around Mars, has successfully slowed itself down, which has put it in orbit. So it's the second European Space Agency probe to go into orbit around Mars. We now have 2 simultaneously. But the smaller probe, which I think we could call the star of the show, the little landing descent module, unfortunately is out of contact. So it is on the surface of Mars, but the question is it in one piece or is it in several thousand pieces? And that will depend what happened as it made those final moments through the atmosphere.
Yes, because Kathy, my colleague earlier on, called it, what is it, 6 minutes of hell or something?
6 minutes of terror, yeah. Very, very short, really. And of course, in that time, it has to do 3 different things. It has to slow itself down in a number of ways. Coming into the atmosphere, it gets extremely hot, starts to burn up. Then when the shield is released, a parachute comes out. There's not much atmosphere on Mars, so if you want to slow yourself down with a parachute, you need a big one. We're talking 8 meters wide for this little probe. And then finally, at the very last moment, just some thrusters to slow it down, and then drop it gently onto the surface of Mars, actually from about 2 meters, coming down at about 6 miles an hour. It's sort of like if you drop your phone or something from 40 centimeters, that's the kind of speed it hits the ground.
Well, mine would break if I did that.
These probes are very robust.
Let's hope it hasn't. Look, let's assume it's going to be successful. I mean, already that is a success to a degree. How likely is it to then complete its mission and find signs of life on Mars?
Now, the important thing to know is that the ExoMars mission, which is the European mission to Mars, it's actually short for exobiology on Mars. So this mission has a strong focus on biology, whether it's life in the past or life today. The important thing is that what we have today is paving the way for a future mission. In 2020, a joint European Space Agency and Russian Space Agency mission will take a rover to Mars to follow up on this investigation. And that rover will be the real science package that's designed to probe these deep questions about life on Mars.
And it's interesting, Tom, isn't it? Because space exploration certainly had a bit of a lull after the end of the Space Shuttle program, but now it's gathering a pace. Certainly British interest is after Tim Peake going into orbit, but we've seen China and its Taikonaut program is really ramping up. You know, Europe and Russia going great guns as well. It seems like we're in another golden age.
We're even seeing governments and private industry battle it out to be the first to get to Mars. So we are entering a new space age, and it's a much larger space age, and there are many more players, but at the same time, I'm pleased to say there's more international cooperation than there's ever been. So I think the future of space is very bright.
Back to the here and now, Tom, just very briefly. What can we expect to hear in the coming hours and days?
The next possibility to hear a signal from the landing module, Schiaparelli is its name, is when an American spacecraft called the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter passes overhead. It will listen out for a signal and it will try to send any data back to the Earth. That will happen within the next couple of hours. So if you're following along on Twitter, you might see something.
I will be. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Tom, lovely to see you. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Now, thousands of people in the Iraqi city of Mosul have begun to flee as the battle to liberate it from so-called Islamic State continues. Aid agencies say many of them have crossed into Syria, which is itself, of course, a country gripped by war. 3 days into the operation, both IS and coalition forces are releasing footage of the fighting in attempts to show that they are having the upper hand, as Julian Drucker reports.
The battle for Mosul will take weeks, if not months. And filmed via a body camera on a Kurdish fighter, we can see and hear the intense dangers facing him and a team of Peshmerga fighters. The self-styled Islamic State may be crumbling, but there are still large pockets of resistance. There is a propaganda war too. This video, released by IS, attempts to show what awaits them. In stylized scenes which could have been taken from a TV drama, defiant militants patrol the streets of Mosul, threatening humiliation on forces attempting to free the city. I swear, I swear, I swear, says this militant. United States, you will be defeated in Iraq. You will leave once more humiliated and disgraced in defeat. In the middle of it all, thousands upon thousands who have fled Mosul. At the Dabaga camp for the displaced, food is scarce and space is at a premium. The manager says every day between 100 and 150 families arrive here. These families comprise around 600 to 700 people daily, every 24 hours. The United Nations says it's preparing to deal with what may end up as the biggest man-made humanitarian crisis in recent times. Julian Drucker, 5 News.
Still to come on 5 News Tonight. A message for the man who wants to be president from the man who already is. And
they called it puppy love.
I'm talking to the original Donald, Donny Osmond, about half a century in showbiz. The man himself is here after the break. Don't go away. Welcome back. You're watching 5 News Tonight. The President of the United States of America has a message for the man who wants his job. Stop whining. Barack Obama was speaking out at Donald Trump's repeated claim that the election has been rigged in favor of Hillary Clinton. He said it doesn't exactly show the kind of qualities needed to be the president. As Layla Hayes reports, though, Mr. Trump doesn't appear to be taking it on board.
Hillary Clinton is the most corrupt person ever to run for the presidency.
This is familiar territory for Donald Trump and for his supporters, the now regular cries of "lock her up." But he's no longer just criticising Hillary. Mr. Trump now says the entire election is rigged.
We're going to end the government corruption, and we're going to drain the swamp in Washington, D.C. They even want to try and rig the election at the polling booths, where so many cities are corrupt, and you see that. And voter fraud is all too common. And then they criticize us for saying that.
At a news conference with the Italian Prime Minister, President Obama said the claims were unprecedented.
I have never seen in my lifetime or in modern political history any presidential candidate trying to discredit the elections and the election process before votes have even taken place. I'd advise Mr. Trump to stop whining and go try to make his case to get votes.
Viva Las Vegas!
Later tonight, Las Vegas will host the third and final debate before the election on November the 8th. Voters seem as divided as ever.
My mind's already made up. I'm voting for Hillary.
I hope Hillary falls off the podium. How's that?
Polls now show Hillary Clinton to be around 7 points ahead of her Republican rival. Donald Trump says the polls are wrong.
I don't believe the polls anymore. I don't believe them. I don't believe them. And if there's 10 and if there's 1 or 2 bad ones, that's the only one they show. Believe me, folks, we're doing great.
Tonight, both candidates will go head-to-head for the final time. If Donald Trump wants to have any chance of winning, he needs to do something special here. Layla Hayes, 5 News.
Radio DJ Tony Blackburn has announced he is returning to the BBC months after he was sacked. Bosses took him off air back in February over evidence he gave to the Jimmy Savile inquiry. At the time, he said he was made a scapegoat by the corporation. He'll be back on Radio 2 in January. Now, lots of pop stars come and go, but how many can celebrate a 50-year career in show business? Well, this man can. And before we chat to Donny Osmond, there he is. Take a look at this. Donny was just 5 when he joined his siblings, the Osmond brothers, on their regular TV spot. In the 1970s, they became one of the most successful touring groups of the decade.
And they called it puppy love.
After deciding to go solo, Puppy Love gave Donny his first UK #1 hit. And he teamed up with his sister Marie to become a TV host.
And this is my kid sister.
There have also been films. He played the lead character in the movie adaptation of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat.
How he loved his coat of many colors.
And now, after selling 100 million albums in half a century of showbiz, he's about to go on tour yet again. But first, he's popped in to see me. It's really good to see you, Donny.
First solo tour in 10 years over here.
First in 10 years.
I
But
can
still
hardly
going
believe-
after 50, and you look great.
Well, 53, but who's counting?
Oh, you are, clearly, but...
May I just say, Tony Blackburn, I'm glad he's back.
You're pleased about that?
I love Tony. I've known Tony for so many years.
Yeah. You must...
Anyway, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, well, let's go back to all those years because, I mean, what a career, 50 years. You don't look old enough. I think a lot of people think
Well,
that.
thank you. I appreciate that.
You look after yourself, clearly.
I work hard.
Yeah.
I'm in the gym. I dance a lot on stage. After winning Dancing with the Stars, people expect me to dance. So in this tour, I've got the dancers from Vegas. I do a lot of dancing myself. It's going to be a fun 2-hour party. In fact, I just have to interject one thought about it.
Go for it.
One thing I'm going to do in the tour, it's kind of a risky thing to do, but there's going to be like 15 minutes of improv.
Right.
The audience takes...
Comedy?
No. The audience takes over. Whatever they want to hear, we're going to do. My band is freaking out because they got to learn all this stuff that we may never do. But I'm ready for anything. It's going to be so much fun.
That's like an open invitation to carnage.
Well, you know, I kind of like it.
What are the fans going to do?
I love challenges. You know, I've done so many things in my career.
Yeah.
And I just like to just take it to the next level. What can we do that's different?
Because the way it all started was, I mean, you're a very close-knit Mormon family.
Correct.
And has that kept you sort of on the straight and narrow, if you like, through your whole life, having this very sort of firm, committed family around you?
I think it's been one very important factor.
Yeah.
I think there's 2 other factors. I've had great parents. They really walk the walk and talk the talk. And they taught some great principles in the home.
Yeah.
And the third factor, I married a wonderful woman who has really been by my side through thick and thin. And 4 factors. It takes a lot of personal effort.
And clearly close to your siblings as well, because that's kind of how you got into the performance.
Tito, LaToya, Jermaine, and they're all great siblings of mine.
The Jacksons.
I'm sorry.
In case you didn't pick up
I
on
don't
that.
have a serious bone in my body, Matt. I'm sorry.
But
I love what I do.
Yeah,
so
good.
Okay, keep going.
No. So and then you work with Marie clearly, and that,
Yeah, unfortunately, that's true.
I watched that show when I was a kid.
Did you really?
Yeah, I did.
You know, we have a residency in Las Vegas. It started in 2008. We had a 6-week contract. And I thought, how are we going to fill seats for 6 weeks? And we just announced our 9th year.
So you're spending lots of time in Vegas?
Yeah, well, I live in Utah,
Yeah.
so I commute back and forth. But yes, the answer is yes, a lot of time.
And how does it feel to be back in the UK? Because you've got a lot of fans here.
Well, I got to tell you, I know this sounds like a cliche, but it feels like coming home. Because all I have to do is go back 3 generations, and this is where I come from.
Really? Where from?
Oxfordshire.
Right.
And Wales, in Merthyr. That's where a lot of my maternal...
Merthyr Tydfil?
Merthyr Tydfil. That's where my maternal ancestors come from.
Really?
But my paternal comes from Oxford.
An old mining town, Merthyr Tydfil.
Oh, yes, yeah.
So they went down the mines, your ancestors.
Yeah,
there were Osmonds down the mines in Merthyr
singing down in the mines.
No doubt about it.
They were all singing, and they called it...
The funny thing is, before, I mean, that Puppy Love was your breakthrough hit, of course, but before that, and I mentioned you coming on, a lot of my friends like Crazy Horses. What a great tune. And Crazy Horses...
That's what they were digging to.
Yeah, it was...
Crazy Horses.
But that was an environmental hit, wasn't it? It was all about the smoke that the coal is sending up in the
horses
atmosphere.
meant horsepower.
Yeah.
All of the pollutions, pollutants that we're putting in the air. That's what it was about. In fact, Ozzy Osbourne even told me that's one of his favorite rock and roll songs.
Yeah, it's wild, and certainly the
well, actually, he said,
this
is one of my favorite rock and roll songs. That's what he said.
Listen, Donny, it would be rude having an upfront American like you here to not ask you. Well, you're the original Donald. Let's be honest, Donald Duck.
Are you bringing politics into this
I am bringing politics.
conversation?
What do you think of the other Donald Trump, and the presidential race?
You really want me to answer this? I know it's
do.
topical because the debates are going to be happening very, very soon.
And you're all over that. You're looking forward to that.
I'm looking forward to that debate.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you who I'm going to vote for.
No, you don't have
I'm not that kind of an entertainer, but I think I'm going to run for president.
You would be great.
My name's Donald, and I got better hair, so there you go.
And I think you look quite significantly younger than him as well. You've got the energy, whatever he says about these opposites.
It is unfortunate how ugly it's gotten.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens.
It's fascinating.
It is fascinating.
Good luck with the tour.
Thank you.
Lovely to see you back on these shores.
Thank you. It's good to be home.
Nice to see you. Thanks for coming in. Donny Osmond, no less. That's it from us for the time being. Sean Welby is here with the weather next, and Danny Sinha has updates throughout the evening. Thanks for watching. See you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.